Discovering $12 million at Thanksgiving led to family conflict. The truth behind the demands. The story of overcoming family favoritism and striving for personal success. Welcome to Silent Wars. In today's Reddit Stories video, we'll be diving into a heart-wrenching yet inspiring story of betrayal, success, and self-discovery. The twists and turns will leave you in awe, so make sure to stick around until the end. If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to Silent Wars for more amazing Reddit stories. Your support helps us bring more content like this to you. In many families, the dynamics that unfold between siblings can have a profound impact on their emotional and psychological development. Some siblings experience unconditional love, while others may feel neglected or overlooked. The story of Sarah, the 38-year-old woman behind this personal journey, is a testimony to the strength and resilience needed to break free from the destructive cycle of favoritism, neglect, and family expectations. Sarah's story highlights not just her personal struggles, but her eventual triumph over adversity, despite being marginalized in her own home. Sarah's family, particularly her parents, had always favored her younger sister, Rachel, from the moment she was born. As the eldest child, Sarah could not escape the invisible shadow cast by her younger sister, who, according to her parents, required more attention due to her medical condition. Although Sarah was not a neglected child in the traditional sense, the emotional neglect she faced left a lasting impact that shaped her sense of self-worth and independence. From an early age, Sarah learned to fend for herself. This early lesson would become crucial when it came time to pursue her dreams and create her own identity separate from her family's legacy. When Rachel was born, everything changed in Sarah's life. A few weeks after Rachel's arrival, their parents became obsessively focused on her well-being, treating every minor symptom as a major concern. This intense focus on Rachel's health, while understandable, created a divide in the family. Sarah was often sent to live with her grandparents when she showed the slightest sign of illness, treated as if her health might somehow affect Rachel's fragile situation. Despite being a smart, capable child, Sarah was often ignored in favor of her sister. This created a deep sense of isolation for Sarah, a feeling of being invisible in her own home, and it marked the beginning of her emotional detachment from her family. As the years went by, Sarah tried to earn her family's approval by excelling in school and achieving impressive accomplishments. She participated in science fairs, brought home straight A's, and performed at talent shows. However, her parents barely acknowledged her achievements. On one notable occasion, Sarah performed a beautiful rendition of Bridge Over Troubled Water for her school talent show, only for her parents to refuse to attend, citing Rachel's mild fever as the reason for their absence. 2 weeks later, the entire family showed up for Rachel's 15-minute flute recital, despite the fact that Rachel had hardly practiced. This glaring example of favoritism cut Sarah deeply, further reinforcing her belief that she would never measure up to her sister in her parents' eyes. For much of her childhood, Sarah struggled to find validation. When Rachel would claim that she was tired or sick, she would receive special treatment, such as extended deadlines or exceptions to rules. On the other hand, Sarah was expected to excel without any recognition, and her achievements were quickly overshadowed by Rachel's perceived fragility. Over time, Sarah became used to being the invisible child, the one who did everything right but received no attention or praise. This difficult dynamic led Sarah to retreat further into her own world, turning her focus to her interests, like art history and antiques, which became her solace. However, the turning point came when Sarah entered high school. As Rachel continued to struggle with her own identity, Sarah excelled in academics and extracurricular activities. She joined the debate team, where she found her voice and learned how to effectively negotiate. It was on the debate team that Sarah began to understand the power of words and how they could be used to advocate for her beliefs. Her time on the team also helped her develop the confidence she needed to confront the emotional neglect she had been enduring at home. She became known for her intellectual sharpness and ability to persuade, skills that would serve her well in the future. By the time Sarah was preparing for college, she had completely outgrown her family's narrow expectations. She achieved a perfect SAT score, a feat that very few could claim, yet her parents were more concerned about Rachel's needs than celebrating their daughter's incredible academic achievement. Sarah's family's dismissive attitude toward her accomplishments reached a breaking point when they asked her to pay for her own education. Despite this, Sarah worked tirelessly to save money, earning tips at a local diner, in order to attend her dream school, the University of Michigan. For Sarah, the scholarship she received was not just financial aid, it was her ticket to freedom, a way to escape the toxic family dynamics that had stifled her growth for so long. While Sarah excelled in college, her family continued to struggle with their outdated mindset. Rachel, who had already failed at 2 colleges, transferred to a 3rd institution, which was yet another example of the family's obsession with Rachel's needs. Sarah, on the other hand, worked multiple jobs and graduated with honors from the University of Michigan. Yet, even with all her accomplishments, her family refused to recognize her success. Instead, they focused on Rachel's journey, which only seemed to reinforce the belief that Rachel was the family's golden child, deserving of all the attention and support. After college, Sarah began working at a prestigious auction house in Detroit, where her passion for antique jewelry and its history grew. It was here that Sarah began to develop her expertise in jewelry authentication, a field in which she would soon make her mark. Over time, she became one of the most successful and well-respected experts in the field, discovering rare and valuable pieces that others had overlooked. Sarah's breakthrough moment came when she discovered a piece of jewelry that was worth far more than anyone had expected. Her discovery caught the attention of high-profile clients, and soon Sarah was running her own jewelry authentication business. As Sarah's business grew, her financial success followed. She expanded her company across multiple cities, becoming an influential figure in the luxury goods industry. However, throughout this entire journey, her family remained unaware of her success. Sarah continued to visit her parents every Sunday, where she played the role of the modest, unremarkable daughter, while Rachel continued to monopolize their attention. It wasn't until Thanksgiving, when Sarah finally revealed her wealth to her family, that everything changed. The revelation of Sarah's $12.4 million fortune sent shockwaves through her family. Instead of congratulating her or expressing pride, her parents and Rachel reacted with anger, claiming that Sarah owed them money for all the years they had supported her. The same parents who had never acknowledged Sarah's achievements now demanded that she share her wealth, with Rachel demanding money for her MBA, and her parents asking for money to fund their retirement. For Sarah, this moment was the culmination of years of emotional neglect and favoritism. Her family's sense of entitlement became unbearable, and she realized that she had to make a choice: continue to support the family that had treated her as invisible or sever ties once and for all. Sarah chose the latter. She cut off her family financially and emotionally, deciding that she could no longer enable their toxic behavior. She canceled the monthly payments she had been sending them, and when they attempted to force their way into her office, she had them escorted out by security. Her family's harassment continued for weeks, but Sarah held firm, ultimately cutting them out of her life for good. This decision was liberating for Sarah, who had spent years trying to prove herself to people who had never seen her for who she truly was. Looking back, Sarah realized that her journey was not just about financial success. It was about breaking free from the expectations of a family that had never supported her dreams, never valued her worth, and had always put the needs of her sister above her own. Sarah's story is one of resilience, determination, and the courage to live authentically, despite the pressures of family and societal expectations. She proved that, even when faced with rejection and neglect, it is possible to rise above, pursue your passions, and create a life that reflects who you truly are. In the end, Sarah learned that her worth was not defined by the approval of others, but by the actions she took to build a future for herself. Her story is a powerful reminder that, no matter the obstacles, it is never too late to create your own path, and to live a life that is true to your values and aspirations. By doing so, she not only achieved financial success but also found the peace and freedom she had longed for. A life built from the ground up. The journey of Sarah's success growing up in a family that demonstrated clear favoritism can leave lasting scars on an individual, shaping their emotional development and often influencing their self-worth. This is the story of Sarah, a woman who faced relentless favoritism in her childhood, only to rise above it, carve out a life of her own, and in a stunning twist of fate, surpass the very family that never believed in her potential. It's a story of perseverance, self-discovery, and success, a tale that many can relate to, especially those who have struggled to find their place within the confines of family expectations and the pressures of society. Sarah's story begins like many others' dreams of success and independence marred by the weight of family expectations. As the eldest child, she was supposed to be the one who would take over the family business and follow in the footsteps of her parents, just like her younger sister, Rachel. But instead of being seen as a reflection of their hopes, Sarah was treated as if she were invisible, just a mere shadow of her younger sister, who in the eyes of their parents could do no wrong. This family dynamic of overt favoritism set the stage for the challenges Sarah would face in her personal journey of self-empowerment. From the moment Sarah's younger sister, Rachel, was born, everything in the family shifted. Sarah vividly remembers the night that Rachel arrived, an event that would forever alter the course of her childhood. She was told that her mother was in the hospital, and her aunt arrived to take her away for the night, which was the beginning of her understanding that Rachel would always come first. At first, Sarah didn't comprehend the gravity of the situation, but over time, it became clear. Rachel's health issues, however minor they seemed, took priority in the family, and Sarah quickly found herself relegated to the background. The birth of Rachel marked the start of a new family dynamic, one that Sarah would never quite fit into. While Rachel was treated as fragile and in need of constant care, Sarah was seen as the healthy one, expected to take care of herself. But what started as a precaution soon became a pattern. Every time Sarah showed any sign of illness, whether it was a cold or a simple sneeze, she was sent to stay with her grandparents. Though she initially thought of it as a fun diversion, Sarah soon realized the truth. Her parents weren't just sending her away for fun, they were treating her as a threat to Rachel's well-being. As a young child, this was a hard lesson to absorb, and the feeling of abandonment only deepened as Sarah grew older. By the time she was in middle school, Sarah knew the score. Her parents' favoritism toward Rachel had become glaringly obvious. Despite Sarah excelling academically, winning first prize in science fairs, earning straight A's, and performing well in various competitions, her achievements went unnoticed. Meanwhile, Rachel, despite having outgrown her health problems by the time she reached the age of 7, continued to receive all of the family's attention, especially in matters of school and extracurricular activities. Sarah's perfect SAT score was brushed off with a casual comment from her mother about how Rachel was the one who really needed attention. Sarah was expected to understand, being the independent one. This notion that she didn't need attention or support shaped Sarah's psyche. It forced her to internalize the belief that she wasn't worthy of their love or admiration unless she was actively proving herself. When Sarah reached high school, the dynamic between her and Rachel reached new heights of absurdity. While Rachel struggled with basic academic work, Sarah excelled, becoming president of the National Honor Society, editor-in-chief of the school newspaper, and a champion debater. Despite her countless achievements, Sarah's parents remained completely indifferent. They were too focused on Rachel's perceived struggles to notice their older daughter's accomplishments. The situation came to a head during her senior year when Sarah received a perfect SAT score. She rushed home eager to share the news but was greeted with indifference. Her mother was too busy helping Rachel with her homework to even look up. Sarah's perfect score was relegated to the back seat in favor of Rachel's latest academic struggle, which seemed to be the only thing that mattered to their parents. Despite this, Sarah's drive for success only grew stronger. She learned to rely on herself and sought validation in other areas of her life. While Rachel was caught up in high school drama, Sarah focused on laying the foundation for her future. She worked part-time jobs, participated in clubs, and ensured that she would be able to attend college without relying on her family for support. When it came time for college applications, Sarah applied to 15 schools on her own, without informing her parents, knowing full well that if they knew, they would only shift their focus to Rachel. The turning point came when Sarah was accepted into the University of Michigan with a full scholarship. The weight of her parents' indifference and Rachel's incessant need for attention finally took its toll. On the day Sarah received her acceptance letter, she made a vow to herself. She would create a life so successful and independent that being overlooked by her family would no longer sting. But even with a scholarship, Sarah's family still found a way to make her feel invisible. They expressed their concerns that Rachel might be lonely or upset by Sarah's departure, and when it was time for Sarah to leave for college, her parents failed to attend the move-in day, citing Rachel's cheerleading competition as the reason. But college became Sarah's sanctuary. She thrived in an environment where her achievements were recognized, and she was finally able to explore her true passions without the constant overshadowing of her sister. Sarah graduated with honors and soon found herself working at an auction house in Detroit. There, she discovered a passion for jewelry authentication, a field that would eventually lead to her financial success. Her expertise quickly grew, and Sarah was able to build a reputation for finding rare and valuable pieces that others had overlooked. As Sarah's reputation grew in the jewelry world, so did her business. She eventually left the auction house to start her own authentication company. This move marked the beginning of her success. Sarah's company quickly gained traction, and within a few years, it had expanded to multiple cities across the country. She became one of the leading experts in the field, and her business was valued in the millions. Despite her success, Sarah kept her achievements secret from her family. To them, she was still just the daughter who worked at an antique shop. However, Sarah's family could no longer ignore her success when the numbers started to speak for themselves. One Thanksgiving, Sarah revealed her $12 million fortune to her family, hoping for congratulations. Instead, her parents and Rachel reacted with anger, resentment, and an overwhelming sense of entitlement. Sarah's mother and father demanded that she share her wealth, with Rachel specifically asking for money to fund her MBA. Despite sending them $7,000 a month to help with expenses, Sarah's family saw her success as something they were entitled to share in. It was a shocking moment, as Sarah finally realized that her family didn't see her for who she was. They only saw her wealth and what it could do for them. The breakdown that followed was inevitable. Sarah cut ties with her family, ending the toxic cycle once and for all. Her parents' constant demands and Rachel's self-pity became too much for Sarah to bear. The family drama escalated as her relatives tried to guilt-trip her into giving more, but Sarah remained resolute. The irony wasn't lost on her. While her family had never supported her dreams, now they were demanding that she share the rewards of her hard work. After cutting off her family financially and emotionally, Sarah moved on with her life, focusing on her company's growth and her personal well-being. Despite the pain of estrangement, she found liberation. Her company continued to thrive, and she knew that she had created a life on her own terms, far removed from the toxic influence of her family. For the first time, Sarah was truly living authentically. It wasn't just about money, it was about proving that she could succeed without the backing of her family, without their approval, and without being compared to her sister. Sarah's journey was one of self-discovery, resilience, and breaking free from the shackles of favoritism and emotional neglect. She proved that no matter where you come from or how your family treats you, you can still rise above and create something meaningful in your life. Looking back, Sarah understood that her worth had never been tied to her family's approval. It had always been about what she chose to build for herself. The $12 million was just a reflection of the hard work, dedication, and perseverance that she had poured into her dreams. It was a reminder that success is not about the hand you're dealt, but how you play it. And for Sarah, she had played her cards better than anyone could have imagined. In the end, Sarah's story serves as an inspiration to those who have ever felt overlooked or undervalued, especially within their families. It's a testament to the power of self-belief and the importance of pursuing your passions, no matter the obstacles. Through her journey, Sarah learned that true success comes not from external validation, but from knowing your worth and taking control of your destiny. The Prodigal Son's Return. A story of success, family betrayal, and redemption. There are moments in life that redefine who we are, challenging the very core of our beliefs and forcing us to confront what we truly stand for. This is a story of one man's journey from failure to unimaginable success, only to find that his family's approval and support were still out of his reach. It is a tale of betrayal, hard-earned success, and ultimately redemption. But most importantly, it is a reminder that sometimes the hardest decisions we make are the ones that lead us to true freedom. Let's meet Oliver, a man who defied the expectations placed on him by a family that believed success could only be measured in traditional ways. Raised in a family where legacy and wealth mattered more than personal ambition, Oliver was the black sheep, a son who refused to follow in his father's footsteps, a decision that would set the stage for his journey of self-discovery. Oliver's story begins with a series of painful family dynamics. His father, Richard Mason, was the head of a prestigious family-owned company, Mason Industries, a firm that had been passed down through generations. Richard had high hopes for his children, specifically for Oliver, who was supposed to follow in his footsteps and take over the family business. But Oliver had other plans. He wanted to study computer engineering, a field that his father deemed frivolous and unworthy of his time. For years, Oliver had struggled to earn his father's approval, constantly feeling the weight of his family's expectations and the fear of disappointing them. It was on the day Oliver turned 18 that everything came to a head. With a sense of finality, his father threw him out of the family home, declaring that he would never amount to anything. "You're a disappointment, Oliver," Richard had said, his voice laced with cold disdain. "You'll fail and you'll come crawling back to us. You'll never make anything of yourself." The word stung, but Oliver knew it was time to leave. He had had enough of living in the shadow of his father's legacy, and decided it was time to build something of his own. Armed with nothing but $100 in his engineering degree, he walked out of the mansion and into a new life. First, life was hard. Oliver found himself crashing on his best friend Mike's couch, working 2 jobs, one at a local electronics store and the other delivering pizzas. Every spare moment was spent learning to code, developing his skills, and preparing for the day when he could finally create something that would change the world. But despite the challenges, Oliver knew he was on the right path. He had a vision that no one in his family could understand, but it was this very vision that would eventually make him a success. One day, Oliver's hard work paid off. A local tech startup noticed the app he had developed and offered him a junior developer position. It wasn't millions of dollars, but it was a chance to prove himself in a world that was rapidly moving toward digital transformation. Oliver took the job, all while continuing to develop his own projects. He had no time to waste. While his family clung to their traditional manufacturing roots, Oliver immersed himself in the world of artificial intelligence, blockchain, and emerging technologies. He knew that this was where the future lay, and he was determined to be a part of it. Years passed, and Oliver's career continued to grow. From a junior developer, he eventually became the lead developer at another company, and his first major project, a revolutionary project management tool, gained widespread attention. Though not wealthy by any means, Oliver was building a reputation in the tech world. He had moved out of Mike's small apartment and into his own modest space. But even as his career flourished, his relationship with his family remained strained. They had never understood his passion for technology, and they still saw him as the son who had rejected the family business. Meanwhile, his younger brother James had taken over the family business, Mason Industries, just as their father had hoped. The company, however, was struggling. While Oliver was building something new, James and their father remained stuck in the past, relying on old methods that no longer worked. Oliver didn't take pleasure in seeing his family fail, but he couldn't deny the satisfaction he felt knowing he had made the right choice all those years ago. Then, for years after Oliver left home, something happened that would change everything. His project management app, which had evolved into a comprehensive suite of business tools powered by artificial intelligence, caught the attention of venture capitalists. In a matter of months, Oliver's company, which he named Novatech Solutions, was valued at $20 million. Within a year, that value tripled. Oliver's small, humble startup was now a powerhouse, and he had moved into a penthouse in the city's tech district. But even with his newfound success, Oliver remained grounded, remembering his humble beginnings and the hardships he had faced along the way. It was at this point that Oliver received a call from his father, a call he had been dreading for years. Mason Industries, the company his father had built, was on the brink of bankruptcy. The stock price had plummeted, and the company's traditional methods were no longer enough to keep it afloat. They needed capital, $5 million to survive. But Oliver wasn't interested in saving the company. He had a different plan. Instead of offering a loan, Oliver made a bold move. He decided to acquire Mason Industries. His reasoning was simple: Mason Industries needed to adapt to the digital age, and if his family wasn't willing to do it, then he would. But he wasn't going to offer a loan. He was going to take over. "I'll acquire your company for $25 million, Oliver said when he met with his father and brother at Mason Industries headquarters. "We'll retain the workforce, modernize the facilities, and integrate your manufacturing expertise with our digital solutions. But there's a catch: you'll need to step aside." His father, stunned, tried to fight back. "You can't just take over the company," he said, his voice tinged with anger. "This is our legacy." Oliver's response was calm but firm. "Your legacy is dying because you refuse to adapt. I'm offering you a lifeline, but if you refuse, your company will fail. The choice is yours." After hours of tense discussions, Mason Industries' board of directors unanimously agreed to the deal. The company was officially sold to Novatech, and Oliver became the owner of the family business. His father, now an advisor to the company, was forced to accept his defeat. But Oliver didn't do it out of spite. He did it to save the company and to prove that the future could be built, even on the bones of the past. The transition was difficult, but Oliver was determined to make it work. He modernized Mason Industries, bringing in new technologies and innovative solutions that helped the company thrive in the digital age. The workforce was retained, and the company found new life under Oliver's leadership. But as his success continued to grow, so did the tension with his family. His parents, especially his mother, couldn't understand why Oliver didn't simply forgive them and return to the family fold. They saw his success as something they were entitled to share, but Oliver refused to let them take credit for something he had built on his own. He continued to send them money, but as the months passed, it became clear that they were never satisfied. They continued to treat him with a mixture of pity and entitlement, demanding more and more from him. The breaking point came when Oliver's parents demanded that he give them a large sum of money to support Rachel's education and their own retirement. Despite sending them $7,000 a month, his parents still felt entitled to more. Rachel, now in her 30s, continued to rely on the family's financial support, even though Oliver had built his own empire from nothing. One Thanksgiving, the tension finally exploded. Sarah, Oliver's sister, revealed that she had built a $12 million fortune from her own hard work, and her family's reaction was nothing short of shocking. Instead of being proud of her success, they were outraged that she hadn't shared her wealth with them. The family descended into chaos, with his parents and Rachel demanding that she give them a larger share of her success. Oliver stood firm, refusing to give in to their demands. He had spent years being dismissed, ignored, and treated as an outsider in his own family, and he wasn't going to let them take what he had worked so hard for. He left the family home, and for the first time in his life he felt truly free. In the months that followed, Oliver's relationship with his family deteriorated. They continued to try to guilt-trip him into giving them money, but he refused. He knew that the only way to break free from the cycle of manipulation and entitlement was to cut ties completely. With his company thriving and his future secure, Oliver was finally able to live life on his own terms, without the weight of his family's expectations holding him back. In the end, Oliver's journey was one of self-discovery, resilience, and success. He proved that no matter where you come from or how your family treats you, you can still rise above and create something meaningful. He didn't need their approval to succeed. He had built his own legacy, and in doing so, he had finally found the freedom he had always sought. The price of success. A tale of betrayal, wealth, and redemption. There are moments in life that challenge our very understanding of family, loyalty, and success. It is in these moments when we must decide whether we will remain shackled to the past or break free to build our own future. This is the story of one man's rise from the ashes of family rejection, betrayal, and the pursuit of personal achievement. It is a story of triumph, but also of painful decisions that had to be made along the way. This is the tale of a son who was told he would never amount to anything, only to prove his family wrong by becoming everything they could not fathom. Meet Oliver Mason, a man who defied his family's expectations and inherited a future that no one could have predicted. For most of his life, Oliver was the subject of comparison, belittlement, and rejection by the people who should have been his biggest supporters, his family. Born into the prestigious Mason family, Oliver was always told that the family business Mason Industries was his birthright. His father, Richard Mason, had built the company into a powerhouse of traditional manufacturing tools and machinery. For generations, the Masons had prospered by staying true to their tried-and-true business model, and Oliver was expected to continue the family legacy. But Oliver had different plans. He had no desire to join the company that had been built by his father and grandfather. Instead, he wanted to pursue something that seemed far removed from the world of machinery and industry technology. Oliver's aspirations, however, were met with resistance, disdain, and a deep sense of disappointment from his father. Richard Mason was a man of old-world values, where success was measured in the tangible and the traditional. To him, Oliver's desire to study computer engineering was not only foolish, but a betrayal of the family's proud legacy. His father's rejection was brutal and unequivocal. "You are nothing without this company," Richard told his son when he announced his plans to study technology instead of following in his footsteps. "I won't help you, I won't support you. You're throwing away everything I built for you." The sting of those words lingered with Oliver for years, but it also fueled his determination. It was on that day, when his father tossed $100 at him and dismissed him from the family home, that Oliver vowed to prove them all wrong. That was the day he walked out of the mansion, his future uncertain, but his resolve stronger than ever. With nothing but a suitcase and the $100 his father had thrown at him, Oliver found himself at a crossroads. He had no car, no place to live, and no safety net to fall back on. But what he did have was a burning desire to succeed on his own terms. He took a bus to Silicon Valley, where he hoped to start over. Oliver found a temporary job at a local cafe in exchange for a place to stay, all the while working tirelessly to develop his own ideas for the future of energy storage. What Oliver didn't know at the time was that his journey would lead him to revolutionize an entire industry, one that would make him millions of dollars, but also alienate him from the very family that had dismissed him. His story was one of painful growth, where every success only seemed to deepen the divide between him and the family he had once tried to please. Oliver's big break came when his work on a new type of energy storage system caught the attention of a major venture capital firm. They saw the potential in his idea, and before he knew it, Oliver was leading his own company, Nova Energy Systems. Over the next few years, his company grew exponentially. Nova Energy Systems became a game-changer in the renewable energy industry, with clients lining up to invest in the technology he had developed. Oliver's hard work had finally paid off, and his company's valuation skyrocketed into the tens of millions. But while Oliver was building his own empire, his family continued to struggle. Mason Industries, under the leadership of Oliver's older brother James, had failed to adapt to the changing world. The company's stock price plummeted, and its outdated business practices were no longer enough to keep it afloat. Oliver had always known that his family's refusal to embrace new technologies would eventually catch up with them, and now that moment had arrived. In an unexpected turn of events, Oliver received a call from his father. Mason Industries was on the brink of bankruptcy, and they needed $5 million to stay afloat. The company's future was uncertain, and his father had no other options but to reach out to the son he had once disowned. Oliver, however, had no intention of bailing out the company with a loan. Instead, he made an offer his father couldn't refuse. He proposed to buy Mason Industries not as a favor but as a business deal. He offered $25 million to acquire the company, promising to modernize it and save it from certain collapse. But the deal came with a price. Oliver demanded that his father and brother step aside and let him take control of the company. His father was shocked, but after several tense discussions, he reluctantly agreed. The deal was signed, and Nova Energy Systems officially acquired Mason Industries. Oliver's triumph was bittersweet. He had saved the company, but at the cost of his family's pride. For Richard Mason, this was the ultimate humiliation. His own son had taken what he had spent his life building, not out of spite, but because his father had refused to adapt to the changing world. With Mason Industries now under his control, Oliver began the process of modernizing the company. He introduced new technologies, integrated AI and automation, and streamlined operations. The company's future, once uncertain, was now secure under Oliver's leadership. But even as his success continued to grow, his relationship with his family remained fractured. His mother and father, especially, could not understand why Oliver had not simply forgiven them and returned to the family fold. They expected him to be grateful for their guidance, despite the fact that they had never truly supported his dreams. They still saw him as the rebellious son who had chosen to walk away from the family legacy. For them, success was only meaningful if it came with their approval. The breaking point came when Oliver's parents began demanding more money from him. They wanted him to contribute even more to their lifestyle, despite the fact that Oliver had already been sending them thousands of dollars each month. They wanted to retire comfortably and live in a beach house, all funded by their son's hard-earned money. Rachel, Oliver's sister, continued to live off the family's generosity, constantly expecting more. Oliver was fed up. Despite his financial success, he had never felt truly appreciated or understood by his family. He had sacrificed his time, energy, and dreams to prove himself to them, but it was never enough. His parents treated him like a charity case, while Rachel spent his money on frivolous things and continued to complain about her life. The tipping point came when Oliver's parents made it clear that they still saw him as the disappointment, who hadn't done things the right way. On Thanksgiving Day, the situation finally boiled over. Oliver had arranged for the holiday meal to be catered, as his mother had been in pain from a herniated disc. She had been unable to cook, so Oliver took it upon himself to make sure everything was perfect. But when his family sat down to eat, they didn't thank him, they criticized him. Rachel mocked him for his modest lifestyle, and his parents acted as if they were doing him a favor by tolerating his success. Then, the moment that changed everything. Rachel found Oliver's laptop in his old bedroom, left unattended. She clicked on it, and what she saw shocked everyone. The laptop screen displayed account balances, business transactions, and contracts worth millions. The truth about Oliver's success was exposed, and the family's reaction was nothing short of chaotic. Instead of being proud of him, they were angry that Oliver had not shared his wealth with them, angry that he had kept his success a secret. The fallout from that Thanksgiving dinner was swift and dramatic. Oliver's family bombarded him with phone calls, texts, and social media posts demanding that he give them more money. They felt entitled to his success, believing that they had helped him get where he was. Rachel even went as far as to post a rant on Facebook, accusing Oliver of hoarding wealth while his family struggled. The hypocrisy was staggering, and Oliver knew that it was time to sever ties with them once and for all. Oliver stopped all monthly transfers to his parents, cutting them off financially. His family responded with anger, but Oliver stood firm. The manipulation, the entitlement, and the years of being overlooked were finally over. He was done trying to please people who would never appreciate his success. He had built something for himself, and now it was time to live for himself. In the months that followed, Oliver focused on growing his company and finding peace in his personal life. He continued to succeed, expanding Nova Energy Systems and earning a reputation as one of the leading experts in the industry. But the scars of his family's betrayal still lingered. They continued to harass him, using every trick they could to guilt him into giving them money. But Oliver had learned a valuable lesson. True success is not measured by how much you can give to others, but by how much you can build for yourself. Oliver's story is one of resilience, strength, and the pursuit of independence. It is a reminder that we are not defined by the expectations others place on us, but by our ability to create our own path. Sometimes the people we love the most can be the ones who hold us back, and it takes immense courage to break free and find our true calling. Oliver Mason's success wasn't just about the money, it was about reclaiming his life, his values, and his future. The price of betrayal. When family demands what you've earned, Thanksgiving is a time for family to gather, give thanks, and enjoy a warm meal together. However, for some, it becomes a battleground where old wounds are reopened, and the tension beneath the surface finally boils over. This is the story of a woman, Sarah, whose life has been defined by being overlooked, undervalued, and misunderstood by her family. For years, she was treated as the invisible child, overshadowed by the achievements of her younger sister, Rachel. But when Sarah built a multi-million-dollar empire from the ground up, her family's perception of her changed only. It wasn't for the better. This is a story of success, betrayal, and the ultimate price of family expectations. Sarah's childhood wasn't perfect, but it was typical for a family where success was measured by accolades, achievements, and status. She had always felt like she had to fight for her place, but there was something about her family dynamic that was always a little off. It wasn't until Sarah was 8 years old that the underlying currents of favoritism began to form a visible divide. Her younger sister, Rachel, was born prematurely and spent months in the hospital, hooked up to tubes and wires. For Sarah, that's when things started to change. Before Rachel's birth, Sarah was an only child, receiving the attention and affection of her parents. Though not overly affectionate, Her parents were present. Her mother helped with homework, and her father occasionally took her fishing. The family dynamic wasn't perfect, but it was stable. That all changed when Rachel arrived. Suddenly, Sarah felt like she was no longer the focus of her parents' attention. The house became a sterile environment, with constant cleaning and hand sanitizers placed around the home in an attempt to protect Rachel from any potential germs. It wasn't just the physical changes that affected Sarah. It was the emotional distance that began to grow between her and her parents. Any sign of illness from Sarah, no matter how minor, sent her to stay with her grandmother or aunt. A sneeze, a cough, off to grandma's house she went. It was as though Sarah's existence itself was a threat to Rachel's fragile health, and that set the tone for years to come. As Sarah's parents became more absorbed in Rachel's care, Sarah was left to fend for herself. She quickly learned that to earn their attention, she would have to excel in ways they couldn't ignore. In school, Sarah did everything she could to stand out. She got perfect grades, won science fairs, and joined multiple extracurricular activities. But no matter what she achieved, her parents were always too preoccupied with Rachel's health issues to notice. Even when Sarah scored a perfect 1600 on the SAT, her mother's response was lackluster. Rachel's struggles in school, on the other hand, were met with endless praise. When Sarah tried to show her parents her achievements, they dismissed them. Rachel's C+ in English was celebrated with family pride, while Sarah's perfect SAT score was barely acknowledged. Despite the constant emotional neglect, Sarah didn't give up. She went on to get accepted to top colleges including Harvard and Yale, but her family's response was the same: Rachel was the focus. Even when Sarah received a full scholarship to the University of Michigan, her family seemed more concerned about Rachel's needs than Sarah's accomplishments. Her parents even made it clear that they wouldn't be helping with Sarah's college expenses because Rachel's extracurricular activities were expensive. This was the moment that Sarah realized the true extent of the favoritism in her family. The years passed and Sarah worked hard to succeed in college. She graduated summa cum laude, but her family remained indifferent. Rachel, on the other hand, transferred from college to college, never finding her footing. But Sarah didn't let that affect her. She had worked her way up from humble beginnings, gaining valuable experience working at a high-end auction house. She spent her days documenting the belongings of the wealthy and learned everything she could about vintage jewelry. Sarah's time spent with her grandmother, who had an incredible collection of costume jewelry, paid off. She began to recognize valuable pieces that others overlooked. It wasn't long before Sarah's skills were recognized in the industry. Her talent for authenticating jewelry led her to start her own authentication business. With a small loan, a desk at a Chinese restaurant, and an old table she found on the curb, she began building her empire. She worked tirelessly, spending late nights researching, networking, and building her reputation. The business grew, and soon, Sarah was working with high-end clients, authenticating pieces worth millions. But even as Sarah's business thrived, her family continued to ignore her achievements. They still saw her as the disappointment who had chosen a career in an antique shop rather than following the family's legacy. At family dinners, Sarah was introduced as the one who works with old jewelry, while Rachel was celebrated for every small accomplishment. Even though Sarah was quoted in Forbes and had offices in 3 major cities, her family remained unaware of her true success. The turning point came when Sarah received a call from her family about Rachel's mounting student loan debt and the struggles they were facing to keep up with Rachel's lifestyle. Sarah had been quietly supporting her family for years, sending them thousands of dollars each month to help with expenses. But this time, Sarah realized something had to change. Rachel's spending had become more extravagant, and her demands were getting out of hand. She had bought expensive bags, gone on lavish vacations, and bragged about it all over social media, all while Sarah quietly funded her lifestyle. It was on Thanksgiving that everything came to a head. Sarah had arranged for the Thanksgiving meal to be catered, as her mother had been struggling with a herniated disc. But instead of being grateful, her family criticized her for the store-bought stuffing and mocked her for her modest lifestyle. Rachel, in particular, made snide remarks about Sarah's career, and her parents continued to undermine her accomplishments. Sarah had had enough. When she left her laptop unattended in her old bedroom, Rachel saw it as an opportunity to finally expose Sarah's failure. But what Rachel found on Sarah's laptop was nothing like what she expected. Instead of finding evidence of Sarah's supposed antique shop, Rachel found proof of Sarah's multimillion-dollar empire. Her account balances, business transactions, and contracts worth millions were displayed on the screen. The entire room fell silent as Rachel's face shifted from confusion to disbelief. The truth had come out, and Sarah's family could no longer ignore her success. Rather than congratulating Sarah, her family became angry. They demanded that she give them more money, accusing her of hoarding wealth while they struggled. Rachel cried, claiming she deserved a share of Sarah's success. Her parents too joined in, demanding that Sarah provide for them in their time of need. The years of being ignored, belittled, and undervalued by her family had culminated in this moment of betrayal. For the first time in her life, Sarah stood up for herself. She confronted her parents, telling them the painful truth. They had never supported her, never acknowledged her accomplishments, and had always favored Rachel. She was done playing the role of the invisible child, the one who always had to prove her worth. In a bold move, Sarah canceled all of the monthly transfers she had been sending to her parents. She was no longer going to fund their lifestyle or their delusions. The aftermath of that Thanksgiving was chaotic. Rachel posted a rant on Facebook, accusing Sarah of being selfish and hoarding wealth. Family members, many of whom Sarah hadn't spoken to in years, reached out to guilt-trip her, claiming that she owed her family. The harassment didn't stop there. Her parents showed up at her office, demanding that she set up trust funds for everyone and provide them with more money. But Sarah refused. She had built her success on her own terms, and no amount of guilt or manipulation would change that. The final straw came when Sarah's parents, after being repeatedly rejected, tried to contact her through her company's customer service. Sarah had to issue a formal legal notice threatening harassment charges. It was only then that her family backed off. Her mother, in particular, was devastated by Sarah's decision to cut ties. But for Sarah, it was the first time in her life that she felt free. 6 months after Thanksgiving, Sarah had relocated to a new home with better security, changed all of her contact information, and put the past behind her. Her business continued to thrive, and she no longer had to live in the shadow of her family's expectations. Sarah had finally learned that success wasn't about meeting the approval of others, it was about living authentically and building something for herself. Her family, on the other hand, was still stuck in the past. Rachel had started her own jewelry authentication business, but without the same connections and experience, it was unlikely she would ever succeed at the level Sarah had. Meanwhile, Sarah's mother and father continued to complain about their finances, despite the fact that Sarah had been helping them for years. But Sarah no longer cared. She had reclaimed her life, her business, and her freedom. As she looked back on the Thanksgiving dinner that had changed everything, Sarah realized that sometimes, the only way to heal a broken relationship is to let go. Her family's toxic expectations and manipulations were no longer her burden to bear. She had learned the hard way that success isn't measured by the wealth you accumulate, it's measured by the freedom you create for yourself. The story highlights a powerful message about self-worth, resilience, and the importance of pursuing one's own dreams, regardless of the obstacles or expectations set by others. It underscores the significance of recognizing and embracing our own value, especially when faced with negative judgments from those we care about. The protagonist, initially dismissed by her family, learns to trust in herself and her abilities, ultimately building her own success. For those in the later stages of life, this serves as a reminder that it is never too late to follow one's passions or redefine what success means. It's about finding purpose beyond external approval, and even in the face of hardship, one can rise above challenges. The lesson is clear. The greatest fulfillment comes from living authentically, not for others' approval but for the peace and pride of knowing you stayed true to yourself. Even when life doesn't go as planned, embracing change, resilience, and a willingness to forge your own path can lead to profound personal growth and fulfillment. Life is a journey that should be lived on your own terms, and the story invites the elderly to reflect on their own lives, encouraging them to embrace the future with confidence and to take pride in the legacy they create, regardless of past judgments. Thank you so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed this incredible Reddit story. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up and make sure to subscribe to Silent Wars for more exciting stories coming your way. We appreciate your support and can't wait to share more content with you soon.